All right, we're live. What's going on, everybody? Hope you had a fantastic Easter over there with, as our preacher put it, empty tomb visibility day. But we have a whole mess over there. I really thought that story would actually linger more than it did, but it kind of really died out after the day it happened, to be honest. But yeah, how was your Easter over there?
It's only so much of that story you can take.
I know.
It just turns your stomach. But no, everything's good here. Easter was great. You know how we roll, and the Wolfpack kept winning. So 2 teams in the Final Four, so that's even better. And Megan and Austin are here. We're getting ready, and you guys are coming tomorrow, so we're all getting geared up for a baby shower. So it's lots of good stuff happening on this end.
Oh yeah, should be fun. I'm gonna be happy to be back towards the coast. Actually, to be honest, it's always nice going back over there. Especially with our weather over here has been just terrible. I don't know what's been going on. Tons of storms, tons of wind. It's just been bad. Can't do anything outside.
Lots of wind and rain here too, and it's going to be cold. So it's not beach weather that you're coming into, but it's still home.
Yeah, which is sad for Junior. Junior was, I don't know why, he's been obsessed with the idea of the beach recently. So when summer hits, he'll be excited.
Well, I'm not saying we can't go.
Listen, if we take him out there, he might try running into the ocean. I don't know.
Yeah.
He's becoming a lot more gutsy about things these days, so it's hard. It's kind of hard to say.
Good.
No.
That's what boys are supposed to do.
It's good until he starts trying to move cushions before the couch and then jump off the couch onto those cushions and then miss and hit his head every now and again. You're going to see him, he's going to have some bruises on his leg, and you're going to be thinking oh, God, what are they doing to him?
Somewhere on some of the videos that we haven't digitized yet, there's pictures of you doing the same thing.
Oh, I bet. The only problem now is, though, he's also encouraging Sarah to do it, and Sarah's still way too young to do it, so... he straight up pushed her off the couch into the beanbag just today.
With you, it was all since Space Jam was the big thing. With you, it was jumping off whatever you could jump off of with a ball in your hand to dunk it in the little goal.
Yeah, back when it was an actual. Well, I don't know. I can't get on LeBron James, I guess, as a basketball player. I'll get on him for his acting. I don't know. Michael Jordan was also a terrible actor, I guess. It was a better movie, is my point.
It's the original. You never top the original.
Yeah, no, not at all.
Well, now that you've got Junior and you see some of the things that he does it make you question some of the pictures we have of you climbing rocks in the mountains or standing at the edge?
100%. 100%. Don't get me wrong. He's fallen off the slide in our backyard more times than I can count at this point. Even Sarah's done the same thing, and we just kind of let him keep going. And you've seen the pictures of him busting his lip and nose open, while trying to, jump off things and do stuff in the backyard all the time. So I let him still explore and do all that stuff, but I don't know, those waterfall pictures, I'm not sure. I'm hanging off a tree over a waterfall. So... yeah, I don't know. That's going to freak me out when he starts getting to that age, especially.
Just keep working out, keep staying loose, do lots of sit to stand exercises so that you can go up there and do that stuff with him.
Yeah, and hopefully
for the most part, I was able to keep up with you, and then when I hit 50, I was able to go way further than you. But there was a point in the middle where I couldn't do a whole lot, and so it took a lifestyle change to get back to where I could hang.
For those who might not know, we did the rim to rim of the Grand Canyon, going from one end all the way to the other, and he was like a mountain goat the whole dang time, just going right on up that canyon face there, and I'm over here dying after every 10 steps basically. It was beautiful. It was amazing. I would love to do it again, but oh my God, it was agonizing for me. I was not prepared. But you were still doing some of the ultra marathons at that time, though.
Yeah, for me. It was one switch back, wait. One switch back, wait.
Then we got to that one rest area, and I just passed out asleep for a good 5-10 minutes.
Good time,
but we did it.
125 degrees.
Yeah. Well, I better get in shape, I guess, here soon, because given how things are, I might get drafted any moment now. So.
Well, I think that's probably one of our news stories. The way the news has been the last few days, especially the NATO news coming out today. That was, I mean, it's not like unexpected, but still, it's a slap in the face to see it.
it's one of those things of it's more of the form. It's making it formal at this point. We all knew basically Ukraine was a part of NATO, right? And that thing and I'll go ahead and pull it up right now. The Secretary of State, and Anthony Blinken, basically straight up said Ukraine will be part of NATO at this point. So here he is in his own words for everyone to kind of hear.
We will do everything that we can. Allies will do everything that they can to ensure that Ukraine has what it needs to continue to deal with Russia's ongoing aggression against Ukraine, an aggression that gets worse with every passing day. Ukraine will become a member of NATO. Our purpose at the summit is to help build a bridge to that membership.
So now don't forget, the whole reason Russia backed off when it came to controlling much of the regions they controlled back when they were the Soviet Union was under the principle that we would not expand NATO. That was the whole point. That's why they gave up Ukraine in the first place. They gave up Ukraine under the idea that we would never expand NATO any closer to the Russian border. Now, obviously, we've expanded NATO a good amount since then, but at this point, we're on the very just verge of making it, I guess, official, right? But let's be real. With all the resources we have in Ukraine, with them having, of course, all of our weapons, we're sending them all this money. We're sending special forces over there to actually train their soldiers. They keep saying, oh, well, our special forces guys aren't actually fighting. Okay, well, we're training their forces. At what point do they just say, okay, they're officially a part of NATO at this point, right? I mean, it is more a formality, but and the fact that it's come out here and not even playing the game anymore and just basically saying, no, we'll make Ukraine NATO. We'll make Ukraine NATO. It's just the dumbest thing you could ever, I think, possibly do at this point.
Yeah, the rules would say that now we're supposed to be at war officially because that's what NATO does. We protect member countries, right?
Yeah, and the thing is, right now they're just saying, oh, well, they will be a part of it. They will be a part of it. Well, now you have Joe Biden over here just openly saying that basically they're already a part of NATO. So here's Joe Biden.
The idea that we're going to walk away from Ukraine, the idea that we're going to let NATO begin to split is totally against the interests of the United States of America, and it is against our word we've given since all the way back to Eisenhower.
So, if you couldn't hear past all the, it was, we cannot turn away from Ukraine, we cannot split NATO. So he's already just assuming basically Ukraine is a part of NATO with that statement alone. Now, obviously, he's going through dementia, so he doesn't know up from down at this point. However, we all know this is true, right? And I think they're getting closer and closer to just at this point announcing it just so they can start pushing more and more energy over to it because, let's face it, they got to do something because people are no longer supporting this on either side almost at this point, and that I think makes them kind of scared. So I think they're trying to, push as much as they can out there to make it so it's almost impossible for us to pull back anymore.
Yeah, the House is about to take up their version of whatever the aid bill is going to be. Supposedly significantly less than the billions.
It'll be 30 billion instead of 60 billion. I mean,
yeah. So we'll see what kind of I'll just say guts that the Republican leadership in the House has as to what they'll bring up and what conditions they'll put on it and things like that. But it's you say that support is dropping. Maybe on the version of Twitter, the kind of the bubble that you and I reside in. I don't know that it's dropping everywhere else because, again, the Uniparty sure seems hell bent on just continuing and coming together on something that's way bigger than it should be as far as the aid package goes.
But I mean, the Uniparty also goes there and does stuff that the majority of Americans disagree with all the time. I mean, Congress has was like a 12% approval rating, if that. So I don't see the same
90+% reelect rating. That's the one that matters. Everybody else's is bad, not mine.
I'll say, everyone hates Congress, but everyone loves their congressman.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, and it's up to we the people to change Congress every 2 years and to keep it clean. But again, 8% of us in a lot of these elections actually get out and vote.
Well, I mean, we're about
It's
to
a
have
tiny
to.
percentage.
Well, we're about to have to vote for president between basically two 80-year-olds. Then again,
It's not-
one of them was a massive incumbent, the other one isn't. So,
Well, don't even get me started on the two octogenarians that we got to choose from. You know my stance.
yes, you want Mr.
I'm-
High
I'm
Heels,
voting.
I know.
I'm going to vote for the lesser of two evils, but the perfect candidate was right there, and we, like idiots, chose the wrong one.
I will say though, DeSantis had gone back doing great things in Florida. Like he's just having like
He
win
never
after
quit
win
doing
after
great
win.
things. He never
what?
quit doing great things.
Well, he didn't quit winning. He quit the perception of winning when he started saying all the stupid crap he kept saying while he was running for office. When he was running for president, the people he had around him is what killed him. Like he himself, again, I agree with you. He's a great politician in the sense of he does what we want him to do, 100%.
Yeah, well, his only sin was he's not a good politician. He's a
I
great
know.
leader. He was a
That's-
terrible politician.
That's why, again, we should have played the left's game against them and just went ahead and elected a minority, like Hindu, like Ramaswamy. I mean, come on. And if you're against him, well, that means you just hate Hindus.
I'm not pleased with our choice, but there is one clear, obvious winner between this
Oh,
who we
yeah,
should all vote for the country. So
Well, I mean, you agree with me in the sense of lesser of two evils when it comes to the general elections is a proper route to go. Like, I know, like, there's a lot of people saying, well, you shouldn't have to choose between the lesser of two evils. You should always vote your heart no matter what. But there's logic behind why you vote the lesser of two evils, and part of it is to try to shift Overton window so then next go around you can actually have someone even more on your side. I can vote your heart during the primaries, 100%. I agree with that. It doesn't matter if your person's going to win or not. Just vote your heart on the primaries. But once you get to a general, the role is to try to shift that Overton window as much as possible. If everyone keeps voting for middle right candidates, well, then eventually it's going to be a case where your debates will be between middle right and, a bit more further to the right, So, like, that's what you want to actually do.
So in theory, I think you're 100% right. In practice, because Republicans have been so terrible, even when we win, they still shift left.
Well, that's true. Well, the problem is voting lesser two evils to shift the Overton window makes sense if the person's actually going to shift the Overton window at all. And the problem is you have too many Republicans who are elected who just they shift the Overton window, they shift it left. They don't shift it right. And those ones, I'm okay with you saying just don't vote at all. I get that.
Well, I
But
still have never said that. I'm still on board. I still think the lesser of two evils is less evil. So I would never say.
I don't know. I'll be honest.
I would never say throw your vote away.
If a Republican candidate came out and said, I plan on banning AR-15s, I probably would not bring myself to vote for them over the Democrat. I probably would just not vote in that regard. I think there's some things that some Republicans have been out there doing that would actually make me just say, I am straight up not voting. Because
So from the time you first registered to vote at 18, have you been Republican registered the entire time?
Yeah, I've been Republican registered the entire time.
Yeah,
Because at the very least, I want to be able to vote in the primaries. At the very least, I mean, that's the big thing.
So I knew the answer to that. So I have been too since 18, and I have voted in a lot of elections through the years, and I probably have voted party more often than I should have, just with what you just said right there. That probably made some poor choices voting party only, with the results that we've all seen. I'll admit that.
Well, I mean, I think also, though, it's worth saying that up until recently, I think it was also harder to be aware of some of the kind of BS stuff that a lot of the politicians were doing as easily. Because like right now, every single thing that gets voted on, the media can't really hide who voted for what anymore like they kind of used to. Like now it's very easy to actually just go online and read the entire bill for yourself. If they say this is the,
That's not easy. They're like 5,000 pages.
Well, I
You
mean,
had
the
to
thing
get
is though,
ChatGPT to read it for you.
the thing is though, like when they were doing the border bill, right, where they were saying, hey, this is going to secure the border, and it took like 5 minutes to read through that and say, you're sending how many billions to Ukraine? What does this have to do with the
Yeah,
border?
it was gonna secure the border, the one with Russia. It was
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then on our border, it was going to secure it by just making it legal to cross illegally. It was complete nonsense. But let's face it, if that bill was being proposed back like in the 80s or 90s, the media could have easily hid that without much effort. It would have been
And they
much harder
routinely-
for the people to get a hold of that information.
and they routinely did hide it. And I'll give the media credit back then for this, because a lot of times I don't think they hid it purposefully. I think they were, because they didn't have things where they could just get access to the entire thing.
Yeah, 100%. And now it's just any politician who sees some of the stuff going on that's kind of messed up, they could easily go into any podcast and reach out to people and get past the mainstream filter very easily these days as well. Even if it's going completely against the grain, we now even have stuff like Rumble where you can kind of get away with saying a lot more over there than you can here on YouTube. And YouTube has just announced they're going to be increasing their censorship for the next election cycle here coming up. So be prepared for that at least. But luckily, I think we're still small enough. We probably won't get caught too much in it.
Yeah, we might should share the Rumble link under every episode though,
That's true.
for the day that it happens.
It's Summit Live on Rumble. Just go over there too. But
Once we go full force over there, we can really say what we think.
oh yeah, that's what we need to start doing is how this. Once we need to set a subscriber limit on both YouTube and Rumble, and once we reach it, we'll start doing like 30-minute just more unfiltered segments over there. How's that?
Yeah, yep. Let's say what we really think. Nah, I don't know. We say pretty much what we think.
For the most
we're
part,
not,
yeah.
We're not quite the radicals.
There's very few things I think that we would both say that would actually get us in trouble on YouTube overall. Maybe some of the stuff involving some of the trans stuff, like if we really went at it, they would probably have problems with. And then maybe some of the election stuff, depending on which rules they go by, every month. Because let's face it, one month they say you can't question elections. Next month they say, oh no, way you can question elections. What are we talking about? That's free speech. And of course, that's when someone like Hillary Clinton wants to go out and question the election. And then of course, once they win again, well, no, now you can't question the election. So
Yeah,
that kind of
we'll have to be especially
varies.
careful when the new avian flu vaccine comes out. then we'll have to really watch our step.
They've already announced in some places in Europe they actually want to regulate people who have chickens to help curb bird flu from happening over there. So they want people to start registering their chickens, which, a bunch of people have already pointed out the fact of, are you kidding me? Like day to day they can die or be born. Like you have one day and you lose like 7 of them to coyotes. Then you have like after 2 weeks, you have like 12 of them from all the eggs. So
Oh man, Uncle. So the Taylor field where we hunt, we call it the chicken houses. They're not there anymore, but when I was a kid, there were chicken houses there. And there might come times where in the summertime it would just get so sweltering hot that they would lose hundreds at the time and get in there with a shovel and try to get all the dead chickens out. And boy, you talk about a smell. But
it's a dirty job, but someone has to do it.
it's a fragile life of a chicken. I saw that firsthand. But they would let me walk through the chicken houses and act like I was doing stuff and then give me a silver dollar. So it was always fun. I still got a lot of those silver dollars in a safe deposit box somewhere.
Hey, I'm pretty sure the metal they're made of is now worth more than they are.
Yeah. So I was looking at some stats on that just today because I was curious. Since 1913, with the Fed and the IRS and all these wonderful things came about in our lives, we've lost 95% of the value of our money. 95%.
Good Lord. And again, this is why Bitcoin. Why we need Bitcoin? Okay, something that's
And precious metals.
far more. And people keep saying, "Oh, Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is a scam." Tell me, is it really any more of a scam than the current Federal Reserve System is of today? I see people posting like all the stats of Federal Reserve saying like, "Hey, someone tried to sell me this crappy cryptocurrency the other day," and they'll throw up, of course, the massive inflation and all the money printed and all this kind of stuff happening and go, oh, wait, no, that's the American dollar. Sorry. I think Elon might have reposted that one. But, like, let's be real.
I did from Elon.
Yeah, like, let's be real. The American dollar is far more of a scam at this point, thanks to us getting off things like the gold standard, than any cryptocurrency out there for the most part. Like, at least any of the big ones. I'm not saying, I'm not a financial advisor. Can't recommend, stuff, I guess. All I can say is if I had more money, I would have more Bitcoin. I can't tell you to buy Bitcoin, but if you give me money, I'll buy Bitcoin. That's...
Yeah, it's the hand motion that kind of proves you're not an advisor. It took that for me to really believe that you're not really a financial advisor.
I know, this right here, jazz hands.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, with as crazy as it is, so obviously, again, Ukraine, World War III happening over there. We also now have a problem.
30 to $60 billion that we don't have that's going to be printed, that's going to, again, affect inflation because there's only one cause of inflation, and that's government printing money. That's the cause of inflation is government spending, nothing else.
Well,
now we're going to just continue this cycle.
Who coined the term that inflation is the tax on the poor or hidden tax on the poor?
It's been out there for a long time. I got no idea who started it. But
I think I first heard it Thomas Sowell, but might be wrong on that. But it's 100% true.
I'm perfectly okay giving him anything that would be proper good credit.
I mean, I got one of the books right here too, Visions of the Anointed. So
now that really one is my copy.
That one I think is your copy. I said I have some of your books. Not free to choose, but that one's your copy.
Yeah, I know for a fact that's not my free to choose copy. I don't know what I've done with it. That upsets me, but I've got Kindle.
Yeah, so we're on the verge of War III with Ukraine. We're printing out billions and billions, or trillions and trillions of dollars and sending them billions of it. Now, of course, on that same bill, we are also sending billions to Israel, and right now, of course, Israel is really getting some major backlash in the media. Did you hear about what happened in their recent strike over in Gaza?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I'll go pull this up. Israel strikes kills 7 aid workers in Gaza from the World Central Kitchen, which is a nonprofit organization that goes and does humanitarian work by handing out tons of food. Now, to make this very clear for anyone who doesn't know, I'm of the opinion of not be involved, period. I don't want to be involved supporting Israel, and I also don't want to be involved trying to help out Gaza. I don't want either of it, right? Morally, I actually 100% support Israel, what they're doing. But from a nation standpoint, I don't want to give them billions of dollars, nor do I want to send billions of dollars to Gaza like Biden's saying they want to do here as well. I just want us to be done with the area. All right, it's every nation that goes there has problems. When Russia went there, they had problems. When we go in there, whether it be Iraq or Afghanistan, Syria, Libya, you name it, wherever we went, we had problems. Let's just get out. Let's just not be involved. However, I will say this. I think this does bring up an interesting question of when you have people going into a nation you're at war with and offering them aid, I'm not going to say they should be valid targets, obviously, because they're not actually fighting you. But at the same time, why should Israel care in the first place if they end up getting caught in the crossfire? That's kind of my thing here. Like, am I wrong for saying that? Am I like the evil person?
Well, I mean, it depends on if you believe in total war or not. Let's go back to Sherman's march, because that's kind of where this whole total war generally gets thrown around. When you go through, you don't leave food for the people because you want the people to be in such a state that they'll no longer continue fighting against you. Yeah. And so you've got to break the will of the people, and that's how you win a war. And so I'm of the belief that war is about one thing. It's about winning. And I think they should fight this war to win.
And to me, that's kind of my whole thing of, if we were in World War II and we found out there was an American organization going over to Germany in Berlin and supplying them with plenty of food and medicine, what would we respond doing? Like, what would our response to that be? Whether it be World War II, whether it be any war we've ever really seriously fought, so any war prior to Vietnam for the most part, would we allow nonprofit organizations to go into enemy territory to provide them aid? And I guess that also brings up the fact of, is starvation a valid tactic in war? Which, let's face it, it kind of has been since the dawn of war. I mean, actually, most wars were fought with siege methods where you just made sure no food got in, and eventually the people would have had enough and they surrender. That's kind of been the basis of most wars, actually, throughout time. When you look at like Eli's large, battles throughout history, what you don't realize is how many battles that never happened because towns and cities and forts gave up because of starvation tactics before they ever went out and fought. And those far outnumber the grand battles we always end up reading about. So why is it now all of a sudden an issue? Why is it now all of a sudden, well, we can't have starving people in Gaza, a country that Israel's at war? Why? Just why? I know, again, it sounds really cruel and inhumane because a lot of these people are innocent.
Well, war is cruel and inhumane.
That's just it.
That's the nature of war.
There's a great Star Trek quote on this, actually, where Kirk, of course, it's the original series because that's the best series, but Kirk arrives at a planet that's at war with another planet in their solar system, and they know they've been at war for hundreds of years, and he lands on the planet, and everything's pristine, and nothing's really wrong with it. And then they later find out people basically, every time a virtual missile blows up a city, everyone in that city goes to be disintegrated, and then more people move into that city. That way they keep war clean so that their society can continue to flourish. And in the end, he blows up the computer running it all, saying, no, you don't understand. It is the horrors of war that prevent people from continuing to wage it. And that once you start feeling the major impact of war is when people will actually start to seek peace. Because right now you're just having silent death after silent death, but it's the hideousness of it all that keeps people from wanting to stop. You've made it too clean. And right now, let's face it, we've made war very clean at this point. We try to make sure, okay, you can't have a single casualty that isn't, directly an enemy. You can't have a single one, or like next you're going to be court-martialed and all this crazy stuff. Even though, let's face it, in war, there's so much gray, these things are going to happen. And we made it so clean now, we were able to wage a war in, Iraq and Afghanistan for 2 decades, basically, and it got to a point where just no one even cared anymore. I mean, it was the whole thing of there's people who were born after 9/11 fighting in that war. It's just insane because we made it so clean.
Well, I think the key point there is people just stopped caring, and there were still people being. We got family members that were terribly wounded and forever altered with their lives, and most people didn't even care or know that it was still going on a lot of the times. But back to this whole idea, I mean, you know where I stand. I pray for peace. I don't want the world to be at war. I don't want anyone to be at war. But the videos that I saw from October 7th, even though my prayers are for peace, I would be all for leveling the entire place and starting all over.
Oh yeah.
Because if I'm going to wage a war, we wage it to win, and we neutralize the threat.
And there's
neutralize
also
the threat. Move on.
And there's also the question of the fact of, okay, a lot of people are going to die if you do total war. 100%. Obviously it's terrible. It's awful. War is not good. We all recognize this. A lot of people are going to die if you go total war on them. But how many more people die when you extend this conflict out for decades at this point? How many people have died from the start of Israel being attacked basically by multiple Islamic terrorist groups around that region, all the way up till now, all because every time they start fighting back, Israel pulls back instead of just going total war on them? I like to kind of think that probably leads to more death, not less death. Like in the short term,
it sure keeps the military-industrial complex happy.
Well, yeah, and I mean, let's be real, that's kind of what they really do. I've said countless times that I'm okay with them buying weapons from us, but the problem is they're taking our tax dollars, sending it to Israel, and then Israel is using those tax dollars to pay private military corporations in America for those weapons. So
and we know for a fact Ukraine is nothing but a big political money laundering operation.
There's been articles written on that since the early 2000s, there's been articles written on that. I think at one point, Vitaly Klitschko, of all people, heavyweight champion of the world for boxing, he went on this whole thing in an interview talking about how corrupt the Ukrainian government is and how they're embezzling money left and right. And I think he even mentioned at one point about like all the Nazis that exist in certain regions of Ukraine as well. And it's just funny that, it wasn't that long ago we're open to all this.
For anybody listening that doesn't know Vitaly, I mean, why would you trust? Why would a boxer know anything about Ukraine? You want to fill him in on why he might know something or two?
He has multiple doctorates and.
And where is he from?
Ukraine. Well, I figured.
And what's his post-boxing career?
Mayor of I forget which city.
A city in Ukraine.
Yeah, mayor of the city of Ukraine. I think his party, its acronym is also Punch, which is kind of funny. But I think everyone though has had to go under one political party at this point because they keep arresting people for having different political parties over there.
Of course, that's the way any good democracy NATO member would act, right?
Well, I mean, hey, we did that back in the Civil War, don't you know? I mean, Lincoln went and arrested a bunch of people who weren't, in favor of continuing the war. Hell, he went and arrested preachers who simply said they weren't going to pray for Lincoln. He went to
questionable Reconstruction moves by Grant too, so we've got our own history to think about. But let's get back to Israel here for a second, because there's two very interesting things to me on this. Number one, the current administration's response to this, because for the most part, I have agreed with Biden showing solid support for Israel. But the rest of the administration is just completely saying the opposite. And now it was either today or yesterday was really kind of the first official break in the administration's stance against it because of that strike. And so there's kind of a break in this administration's support for Israel. And we already know he's getting pressured hard from his left flank to go in and just go full on river to the sea and support Gaza. And so where do you think he's going to land? Where is this administration? Oh, number one, where are they really right now? And number two, where do you think Biden's going to land when it comes time to have to stand up and actually take a stand at his convention?
Well, let's be honest here. It's a no-win situation for him regardless, right? It's a no-win situation for him because the members on the radical left who they keep courting more and more and more are heavy Gaza, right? They're out there chanting outside of Biden's fundraiser, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, right? They openly call him a supporter of genocide left and right? Or left and right, yeah. So the far left has already got to a point where they are going, you know how the left protest. You know how they can get when they get riled up. Of course, most of them don't have jobs. They can go out there and protest them all day long, every day, and get tons of media attention for it. At the same time, however, he also has a lot of people who donate to him who are Jewish who heavily support Israel. As well as, of course, you have the military-industrial complex to think about as well when it comes to his perspective on it, at least. Well, so there really is a no-win situation other than maybe to demand a ceasefire, which is what almost every American president has done since these conflicts have started, where they just go, we support Israel, and Israel, of course, makes one error and oh no, okay, well let's go with the ceasefire now. Let's go with the ceasefire now and try to brush it under the rug the best they can and hope for 2 more years of relative peace to make sure they can still win re-election. So I think that's where it's probably going to end up going, is going for a ceasefire. In fact, he's actually already saying, and I'll pull this up here.
Yeah, that was the break I was talking about.
Yep. Today I spoke with Prime Minister Netanyahu to emphasize that the strikes on the aid workers and humanitarian situation in Gaza are unacceptable. Israel must implement steps to address civilian harm and safety of workers and work towards a ceasefire to bring hostages home. Now, the funny thing about that is the fact that he says a ceasefire basically would be what would bring the hostages home.
Yeah.
Why? Why would that bring anyone home at that point? What purpose would they have to do that? If they want, here's the thing. Israel probably would do a ceasefire if they just released all the hostages. Israel probably would let more humanitarian aid go in there if they released all the hostages. In fact, there's been protest in Israel of protesters trying to stop aid from entering the Gaza Strip saying, yeah, not a single loaf of bread. And I think it was down here. If we for one, here's a good point. This is some of the protesters out there. A lot of them are veterans who already served in the IDF as well, because I think they do like a mandatory service over there.
They do.
They say, if we knew it's gain to children of Gaza, we would not do it. This arrives into the tunnels of Hamas fighting us and holding our hostages, which is a good point. How do you know the food's even going to the civilians in the first place? I mean, Hamas is an organization that when we gave them tons of water pipes to help fix their situation when it came to having, proper water supplies, they turned those pipes into missiles. So why would they not take the food first and give it to their troops before they ever send it to any civilians, period? But then they keep going. So down here, not a single loaf of bread should go in there till our hostages are coming back. When questioned about the scale of the human suffering in Gaza, Katya was unmoved. Even if there is a humanitarian crisis, and there is not, I don't know. It kind of is. I mean, I'm not going to lie there. But it is my right and my duty to prioritize Kfir Baibez over any Gazan baby, she said. And the Baibez is a 9-month-old that was taken captive alongside his mother, his father, and 2-year-old brother as well. And no, they're not wrong.
Do we not agree with that? Let's say that it was our American neighbors that were being held in a foreign country. Would we not do everything within our power to get them back?
Exactly. And why would we at that point say, hey, you're holding all these American hostages, which actually some of the people they're holding are American hostages. So that should also be pointed out that we are abandoning them as well. But, hey, you're holding you broke into our country and took hostages and brought them over to Mexico. But you know what? We're still going to give Mexico tons of foreign aid money, as well as continue to give them, food and whatever resources that are constantly being sent over there anyway. It makes no sense. Why would you ever do that?
It doesn't. And oh man. So my second question for you was going to be this one. In my life, you study your history, you study what's happened historically at even, whether it's a church or school, you're always learning about the trials and travails of the Jewish people, right? So everything has been about the suffering of the Jewish people. I've never in my life seen so much anti-Semitism that's just flat out in the open everywhere you look, on Twitter, on other social platforms, on TikTok. Where do you think this is headed? Because the anti-Semitism in this country is really out there and getting crazy.
I'll be honest, it's actually one of the things that do kind of concern me a little bit, because I see it on both the right and the left. Now, primarily it's on the left at this point, right? I think we both agree with that. All the people who are out there supporting Gaza, talking, from the river to the sea, all that nonsense. But there is starting to be this rise of people who I at least see online, and online obviously isn't a good perspective on reality. But the fact there is an increase shows that there is at least some kind of increase happening nonetheless. And I am seeing people on the right who are saying some things that I would say is walking that line very dangerously on what is criticism versus what is anti-Semitism. Because there's plenty of people who disagree with the conflict who are not anti-Semites, right? I mean, there's tons of people who are very much adamantly anti-war in general and think that there should be some kind of peace treaty signed and another ceasefire should be tried, because that's just the way they view the world. They always want there to try to, have an attempt at a ceasefire no matter what. And I disagree, but I understand at least their perspective, and I don't think they're anti-Semites for it. And there's plenty of things you can still criticize Israel for all throughout the past. I mean, they're not no country's an entirely innocent country, right? I mean, there's no truly innocent country out there. They're just countries who are slightly better than others. And, there's plenty of criticism that can be happening, but I am seeing more and more where it seems to be walking that line even on the right, which does kind of concern me a little bit.
Yeah, I'm definitely seeing it. And I never thought I would live to see another day where just openly racist, anti-Semitic cartoons and caricatures would just be shared openly. And I'm not saying I want it to be stopped for people being able to say what they think. I just never thought we'd get to a place where there would be as many people that believed on that.
I mean, you talk about the stereotypical cartoons and all that stuff being shared more often now. I don't know. I mean, Family Guy had some pretty stereotypical Jewish characters in that. And that was big in the early 2000s, so...
Well, you can't. I mean, they had stereotypical of every race, and so don't go hating on Mort. He was a good character.
I don't know. They had the whole him singing to a star and saying, it was like, please send me a Jew to help him with his financial situation.
Yeah.
How'd you know I was Jewish, Mr. Goldstein? But here's the thing, all that stuff was done more in light fun, right? It's all in jest, it's all just kind of comedic, and that sort of stuff 100% should be allowed. It's on the same vein as like stuff like
Don
Blazing
Rickles.
Saddles. Do what?
And then Don Rickles. That's the comedy I grew up on. You make fun of everybody. But you don't do hate-filled caricatures.
Well, now the problem is that like you literally see anytime someone shows like support of Israel, you have people on both sides showing things like like a really like hook-nosed Jewish man like controlling America, and I'm over here and I've said this countless times. Anyone saying Israel controls America has not paid attention to what's gone on in Israel for decades at this point, because all it is Israel wanting to fight Hamas and us grabbing them by the leash and pulling them back over and over and over again. Israel doesn't control America. We control Israel. I've been saying for a long time now, if you just let Israel, if we abandon Israel, Israel doesn't suddenly, go away or anything. No, what they do is they probably actually go ahead and go total war on a lot more of their neighbors, to be honest. It's us who hold them back, not the other way around.
So you remember, I guess it's okay to say his name. Do you remember Master Chief Brooks from our neighborhood?
Yeah.
The older guy, he passed away just not that long ago. But you remember what ship he was on that got bombed? He was on the USS Liberty that was bombed by Israel.
Yeah.
And what history will tell us that it was a mistake. He and other people on the ship and other people around it, they don't think it was a mistake. So if anybody doesn't know the history of the USS Liberty, that's an interesting rabbit hole to jump down if you get some time to jump down it. But
that's probably one of the
a lot of questionable things.
More closely to just straight up proven black flag events, basically. But
yeah, it'll make you question a lot of things that you think you know about the way history went down.
Well, it's one of those things also where you go, okay, so how many times does stuff like this happen that we just don't know about?
Yeah, I know, and I got to sit at the sound and just have it told to me by an eyewitness who was there and who saved the actual ship and got medals and accommodations for standing in the engine room when everybody else was either dead or dying, and actually saving the ship. So that was firsthand information about what they knew.
I wish I took the time to talk to him about that. I again, you told me the story maybe like a few months ago or so, but I didn't really know of it till then. So that's still pretty amazing. How old was he when he passed? He was pretty old too.
I think he was in his 80s, but he wore his USS Liberty hat all the time, and he he had a touch of dementia, and so he would every conversation was almost the same. It would always start with, "Do you ever hear the USS Liberty?" Like, yeah, we talk about it all the time, Mr. Brooks. But it would always start out with that, and then if you ever open the door where he could let it roll, man, he would let it roll. So he would forget he had told you, but he didn't forget the facts of the story.
Yeah, but was it one of those things where every time he told it, like he got like a different fact kind of in there somewhere,
The only way it got different is if you let him know that you had more time, then he would tell you more of the story. And so eventually, I got stories about coming back in dry dock and some other things that happened once he got back. And so there was some interesting non-USS Liberty stories about submarines and other things he was a part of. But, man, there's no better way to learn history than to be with people who were there. Hey, I found this earlier today. I don't mean to leave dead air. But let's see.
Visitor to Hell?
Do you remember, did you meet Joe Dickerson at Grandma and Granddaddy's house?
So, met, yes, but didn't really talk much at all.
So
because that was a long time ago.
He landed on the beach at Normandy. He landed on Omaha. and went through hell on Omaha Beach. And so he wrote this as his story of what happened. One of the times I went to the D-Day Memorial at Bedford, Virginia, he was on the bus with us. And I tell you what, man, if you want to hear some stories of what happened, you can watch all the movies you want, but go to a D-Day Memorial with somebody that stormed the beach and listen. And when we got to the memorial, and another veteran that was at the beach, they saw each other from a distance. They both had their hats on, and the tears and the hugs and just watching that interaction, man, it was insane. And but no, so I found this. So when you come, I'm not going to give it away, but I want you to look through it when you get here this weekend. So spend a little bit of time, because this crazy what he went through, and he's just a farm boy, grew up right on the farms where we hunt all the time now.
That's crazy. So is it just kind of a memoir of like what he went through when he was there?
Yep.
Nice. You have to make sure you make copies of that, because stuff like that, like obviously, should be definitely preserved more and more. And the sad part is, it's getting harder and harder to get those kind of stories.
Yeah, no, and you got it. I don't know how to say this the right way, but a trusted source of the stories,
Yeah.
I think, is where I was headed.
Well, it's funny because that show Band of Brothers, obviously one of the coolest things they did in that was they actually had the people who were there, at least which ones that were still alive, and like between each episode, like at the beginning and end, they would be interviewing them, which was to me one of the coolest things about it. Actually, like don't get me wrong, the show absolutely amazing just for what it shows, the best World War II anything I think you could ever watch. But those like little like mini interviews with them afterwards are really funny. But you mentioned, you're right there, having a trusted source. One of the things they did is they had a whole episode about a guy who like gets kind of like a little bit of like shell shock or something. And then like he kind of gets it together enough and says, okay, I've been a coward because of the shell shock. I'm going to go and lead these guys to an area where I know we're going to get ambushed, basically. And he gets shot. And they have this whole thing of like, okay, well, at least, he was brave in the end and did all this stuff. And it says, so-and-so died, yada, yada, yada. He didn't actually die. Like, apparently everyone who was part of, like, the group thought he died because he got shot through the neck and they didn't hear anything from him afterwards. But he went home and lived, like, another 20, 30 years or something. Like, he died of, like, lung cancer later on or something like that. And so I'm just imagining if he hadn't have died earlier than the show was released and if he was as old as they were, he would have been like watching like, this is an episode about me. Oh, look, there I am. And it would just say he died soon after from his wounds.
It's only a flesh wound.
Pretty much is how it actually turned out. He had like that and like another wound in the leg, and he went home after that. Like he had I'm not sure if he had a good life or anything, but he lived a good 20 or so years. So even in shows where they have the first-hand accounts, sometimes they can still get some things a little off.
Well, we know the veracity of first-hand accounts for witnesses and crimes or anything else it's always highly questionable. So everybody's going to remember things. And just, think back when you were a kid and some of the stories. Most of the things I remember, what I've learned is I don't really remember them. I remember what people told me about them or what I saw in pictures.
And that's kind of has a lot for me as well. I have a couple things that are very like weird far back memories I can just recall like that. Like I remember being at the mall when I was like 2 or 3 years old and getting like some type of pictures of mom at one point, and it's like as clear as day I can remember it. With like these like big crayons that were as big as I was, which obviously means they were probably like this big. But and the picture's like over at, I think mom puts it up around Christmas time or whatever. But like that I remember clear as day. But then there's like tons of moments all through elementary and middle school especially I just draw complete blanks to and have no memory whatsoever.
Yeah. I once I guess I was 5 years old, so I don't remember anything before, and that's when I had the wreck, and I don't remember anything really before or not much right around that time. So you asked me, I know what my kindergarten teacher's name was, but I don't remember the first thing about kindergarten.
See, I have a lot of memory of like kindergarten and first grade and second grade. My memory starts dipping around like sixth grade or so, but that was also when I was having like kind of some anxiety issues and stuff like that, and kind of becoming that awkward, silent kid in the corner basically for a long time. So maybe that could also be why I don't remember much of it. But
you didn't have a massive concussion, traumatic brain injury. So
I don't get the same excuse you got, right?
That's what knocked it out of me. But yeah, so this I guess back to Master Chief and our relationship to Israel. So you support their right to defend themselves and to wage war
100%.
on their terms.
And hell, I support the right of Ukraine to sit there and defend themselves however they see fit. If they want to start using drones like they are to bomb Russians out of foxholes, I'm not saying it's exactly the most moral way of fighting, but when your nation's at risk, listen, they should have attacked you. Tough luck on them. I got no problem with either of these countries doing whatever they want to defend their borders and defend their country. My problem is strictly to do with the fact of we are $30 trillion in debt and sending them hundreds of billions of dollars. We can't do this.
So what we would be looking for is what is the American interest in continuing the war. So the argument that Israel is the one bastion of democracy in a sea of hatred, that region is so important for a lot of reasons, but obviously the oil and the things that are there are very important. You don't see any American interest in supporting and providing Israel the support to stay open and free.
No, because I think the Middle East is entirely unimportant altogether, period. Because we have more oil in like Texas and Alaska than they have throughout the entirety of the Middle East. We don't need their oil. It's easier. It means we don't have to work for it in our own country. But the reality is the oil is here for us to have, and it's way more than anything the Middle East could ever provide. And frankly, if we were mining it ourselves, we would probably get better terms than whatever, obviously, they're selling it to us for. I mean, fine, let them battle it out. Whoever wins, we buy oil from them. I mean, we buy oil from Saudi Arabia all the time, and they're not really a good country either. I don't think it really matters one way or another who's in control of the Middle East when it comes to American interest. And I know some people say, well, if we don't get involved, another country will get involved. Well, hell, look what happened when Russia got involved. It about destroyed the Soviet Union. It doesn't go well when other countries get involved. And we see the negative impact us getting involved in the Middle East had on our country, whether it be lives lost, whether it be just our image on the global scale, whether it be obviously the price of oil and gas in our own country. All these things factor into that. Why would we not want China to try to get involved and get those same costs given to them? I mean, I think it's just the Middle East is one of those areas in the world that is the classic overreach territory where whenever someone goes for it, it ends up causing them far more damage than benefit at the end of the day. So I don't see a point in us really caring who in the end controls it. I hope Israel controls it. I really hope. I would love for Israel to have control of almost all the Middle East. They're far better than all the other countries. But, I mean, I don't want to have to go over there myself to fight for it. And I sure as hell don't want to, in 20 years send Junior over there to fight for it. I mean, that just seems kind of pointless.
Yeah, I could be, not to the extent that has been proposed and actually that has been done, but I'd be more willing to agree to a package for Israel than Ukraine. I don't see the American interest as much in Ukraine.
Oh, yeah. Well, I will say this. One of the few places I do think we actually have a strong interest in might just be Taiwan. Mostly because we don't have that kind of resources in America to make all the chips and everything for our computers like Taiwan has. Like even the equipment alone to manufacture it in the first place is extremely, extremely complicated to a point where we've had a hard time replicating all of it here. Taiwan might literally be the only place I'm actually somewhat concerned about, which is a shame when Biden comes out there and says that we're in support of a one China policy and do not support Taiwan's independence.
Yeah, and then they had the earthquake. I don't know if you saw the videos from the earthquake, but that was
massive, right? It was like a 7.2 or something.
A 7. So what I heard it was 2, a 7.5 and a 7.4.
Oof.
And the videos were crazy, landslides and collapses, and they showed pictures in Japan where when a tsunami's coming, how the water will just recede completely.
Yeah.
So it showed the water like sucking out but I guess it never materialized into a real tsunami.
Well, I was wondering
But,
that when I saw it. Like, has anyone really been hit with major tsunamis yet?
Apparently, no, because that right after it happened, maybe an hour later, they shifted from a tsunami warning to an advisory. So they were already lowering the risk levels, but apparently right around the same time, and you never know if these news reports are true, but they said that China had staged a lot of warships and they had planes flying over. Not planes for humanitarian. Let's go help out these poor folks that were hit by a earthquake, but military.
So I remember one of the funnier things that happened to me was when I was in Alaska and I was passed out asleep at night, had a water right next to my bed, and next thing you know, I'm covered in water, everything is shaking, and some alarms in the building are going off. And it wasn't a massive earthquake or anything. It was like one of those ones where just kind of like, hey, everyone be alert, just stay down. It wasn't like the get out of the building right now type of earthquake. But it was enough to knock over the water on me in the middle of the night. And that alone shook me up more than the earthquake itself. I kind of got, I guess you could say a little bit lucky in the sense of I got to experience, it was like 3 or so earthquakes I got to experience while I was in Alaska. But all of them were very small, obviously. In fact, there was a couple of them that happened that I can't really say I experienced because I was driving and didn't even notice they were that small. But if you're on the ground, apparently it's pretty easy to notice. But all I could think of is every time I went to the gym and started squatting, I was like, all right, this could be it, any moment now. I mean,
Well, I wasn't going to the gym, but Anchorage was that's the only place I've ever felt an earthquake, and it wasn't a big one. I was sitting there doing some work and at the desk, and it shook, and my thought was, man, somebody up there, somebody up in the rooms above are really getting after it. But I was like, well, I don't really hear anything going on, and then like a little alert came across that there'd been an earthquake, and I was like, that's
you
what
thought
that
some
was.
people were just having a good time.
Yeah, because it was just it was a shimmy, and stuff on the desk started shaking around, but it never crossed my mind that it would be an earthquake. and I had been hiking at Earthquake Park, where the whole landslide went into the bay out of Anchorage. And
It was
so,
closed down like my entire trip there because it was just so packed with snow when I was there, unfortunately. There was one day where they canceled the slopes over at the snowboarding park I went to because of an earthquake, and they were just like, hey, we don't have to worry about too much here, but we're going to do like an hour or two closure and take
Avalanche.
precaution.
Yeah.
But
So yeah, the park was open when I was there, and so were the trails. So you could pretty much walk from there just about all the way down. It felt like you could have gone to downtown. I didn't walk that far, but it was awfully nice. That was kind of cool.
so I was looking at some of the video here of the earthquake on X, I guess now. And what's always interesting about this, you mentioned, in fact, of course, the water receding and all that. They live in an area where clearly they know tsunamis happen, and yet when the water recedes, there's videos of people just with their phones going, oh, look at this, look at this, look at this. We don't live anywhere near earthquakes, and we all know if you see water receding, you get away. You get away as fast as possible. And you still are going to be very lucky to escape it even then. Like, it's not a long time, but even, like, over there's people just with phones going, oh, look at this, look at this. I mean, come on, people.
Was the big one in Indonesia? Was that like 2004 or something, or 2007? But there's still obviously some of those videos still pop up every once in a while.
Yeah, I've seen them.
And it's the same thing. There's people out there. They didn't stop taking pictures.
Now,
They didn't stop the cameras.
This it's a little morbid, but also, I don't know, kind of humorous to me is when you watch some of the videos, like all the tourists are like, oh, look, this is so cool. And you see like the faces of some of the locals going like getting really nervous all of a sudden. It's like, okay, well, they know what's up at least.
Yeah, well, there was so many tourists involved there that I guess just didn't have any idea.
Well, also back then, again,
you see the videos going, and they don't even start running until the water's about at their feet, and then they realize, okay, that's not normal.
So it's one of those things where, like, I understand people not knowing stuff like that for the most part, especially back then. Like, you didn't have Twitter going around where these videos is just, which, let's be honest, are basically almost just snuff
Stop
films.
dead naming the app.
Sorry, X, before people, people weren't able to X things. Which were pretty much snuff films, right? I mean, it's really videos of people like right before death. that wasn't really as prevalent back then, so I get why people wouldn't know about that. The one thing that always got me is obviously us growing up on the coast was stories about people being caught up in rip currents and dying from that. I don't know, like that one always seemed like kind of an obvious one. And again, maybe it's because we lived on the coast, so y'all taught us about that pretty early of if you're getting pulled out by a rip current, just swim parallel to the coast and then go in diagonally. Like it's not literally just let yourself float, let yourself get pulled away and just relax and you'll be fine.
Yeah, don't fight it.
Yeah. I mean, really, even if you don't even swim parallel, for the most part, rip currents kind of go like that. So even if you let it carry you, it's gonna kind of carry you back around eventually. And it's salt water, you can float. It's not that hard. But yeah, that's one of those ones that I never really understood. But the whole tsunami one back then, I kind of get why people might just think, "Oh, cool, water receding, isn't that neat?"
Yeah,
Every
and
hurricane, we did that at the Sound. Of course, we didn't have to worry about tsunamis, but the sound wall would be ripped out, and we'd be going.
Our sound is wind driven though. It's not a sudden change of water level. It receded over hours and hours and hours of a northerly wind.
Yeah,
That's a lot different. I think until then, because the only thing I knew about a tsunami was from cartoons and things, right? And there was always like a 50-foot, 100-foot giant wave coming in. And what that taught me was that's really not what it is at all. It's just a big tidal surge that
it's
comes
basically
through.
like the flash floods you'll see in a mountain, basically, where it's like it's not like a wave. It's just a sudden rise in water. Like it's.
Yeah. And so it can be a wave, but it doesn't have to be.
But
It
normally
doesn't
it's
have to
like
be. It
just
could
a
be
quick
push.
current. Yeah.
So I didn't know. So I would have been looking for the giant. If somebody said a tsunami's coming, I'd have been looking for a wave, the size of a hotel.
Yeah, and then you watch all the videos, and all it is just water rising, water rising, water. Oh, what do you know? It's too high now, and that's it, really. Like it's too high and has a pretty heavy current. It doesn't really come in usually that often as a wave, except in very rare occasions. Which I think did the Indonesia one? Did that one have like actually a pretty big wave to that one? I think is what it was, which is why it killed so many people.
But it still wasn't like what I grew up seeing on cartoons and things when they would show, or the movies that might try to show one back then. But
Well, it's like how cartoons made everyone think like quicksand was a lot different than it really is too. I think there's that meme of I thought quicksand would be a lot more scary thing that I'd have to deal with in my day-to-day life than it really is.
yeah, Blazing Saddles, made me think it might be a problem.
Yeah. I don't know, that quicksand looked kind of watery, but tell the mayor I said, ah. I'm pretty sure I could poke through that entire movie, though. We'll be removed from YouTube if I did.
Yeah.
Oh, man. No, it's kind of a funny thing because, like, out in the woods and everything we went to, there was actually, there is like a little bit of quicksand, but it's like, it goes up to like your knee, which obviously one of my friends got really called in pretty bad that one time, but coming out looking like a mud monster.
Oh yeah, I remember him coming back in. That was hilarious. I tell you what's more dangerous around us is you jump into some of your creeks and ponds and things where we fish. And those bottoms are really soft. You can easily go into like your waist in mud and not be able to get out.
I was going to say you could jump in there and just land on a hidden stump and break your ankle or something too.
Well, that's Taylor's Mill, but yeah.
I mean, even I don't know. And also, just sometimes, especially out in the Sound, it's hard to sometimes tell the depth too when it comes to all that stuff. Like you'll jump in like one spot and it'll be over 7 feet deep, and then you jump in another spot right next to it, and it's like 3. I don't know. It can be kind of crazy out in there too.
So a couple of years before Austin had his accident, we were out at Taylor's Mill, and we were on. We had 2 different John boats out there. I don't know exactly why, but he was on one, and it got a little wonky, and he fell into the mill pond. And I told him to this day he's the only person I've ever known that could fall into a pond and never get wet. You know how hard it is to get back into a boat from the water, right?
Yeah.
He fell, hit the water, came back out, cleared the edge of the boat, and was back in the boat, all because he was scared a snake was going to bite him.
So climbed out of the water like Peter.
he must have found like the one solid part of ground in that entire pond because he popped back out. I'd never seen anything like it in my life.
Grandma said I did something similar one time when I fell into Ricky's pond. Like I just took one step off the pier and slid, kind of sideways, and it was about a massive bruise all on the side of my like my ribs and all that, where it just kind of hit the pier. But I was in and out almost instantly. I was like, there's like multiple snapping turtles in here. I ain't gonna be in here. No one call Yertle the snapping turtle. I don't want to meet him.
Yeah, I was gonna say around that pier, we fed Yertle pretty good. That turtle loved barbecue more than you do.
That's still so wild. If there was a snapping turtle in the pond that like my kids were near, I'm pretty sure I'll just grab the 22.
Instead, we grabbed the barbecue and kept it fed.
Well, man, I find funny starting Israel and we're talking about swimming in ponds out in the south. People are gonna think we're way more country than we actually are.
You've seen some of the older videos of me. I used to be a little more so. So at least I did live it at one point.
Yeah, I grew up in a standard suburban neighborhood. I can't claim but so much. It was a bigger suburban neighborhood, like property wise than most others. So I can at least say that.
Yeah, we got some. We got evidence of you. We got evidence of you killing deer at a young age.
Hey, 2 deer with 1 shot. I'm just gonna point that out there. I think that's a fair one. That was like 10, 11 years old when I killed my first deer. That's an appropriate age for that too. So
you were 10.
And I already have Junior over here. I pull out the deer antlers, and has one of them that I don't have mounted yet. Still has the fur and all that stuff from the deer. And I'm like, here, buddy, you can pet the deer. Getting him kind of used to. He like touches the skull behind it. I'm like, yeah, that's the bones. Let's numb you to this now. When we took that when we took the gator out behind the farm with him, we saw those deer corpses laying out there from when my uncle went out there and killed some. We're just kind of like, hey, Junior, look at that. You can see its spine. Look at that.
Yeah, man. I'm not sure which animals pulled them out, but they pulled them out to the field.
Yeah, no, they were like in the field too. So it must have been. Yeah. I'm guessing it was probably a coyote or something more than likely. I mean, those buzzards, they can haul some things when they want to. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was them either.
Man, Russell hates a buzzard. They fly over the house. He goes nuts outside to get them out of the. I think he used to do it to protect the cat because he was afraid they were going to come in, because they would roost in the trees.
Yeah,
and he's hated them ever since they kind of came in. Tried to dive down the yard.
There's that one time when Lottie did come back and she had a massive gash in her side. We never knew what that came from, so that, for all we know, that could have been a buzzard. Then again, in that neighborhood, it could also have been a fox or something too, because we saw a couple of them around. I feel so. I have no problems with killing coyotes, but I don't think I could bring myself to shoot a fox. They're so cute looking. I know what they can do. I know they can kill all the chickens. They can kill a bunch of innocent like pets and stuff. But they're
both of them look like dogs. I can't myself to do it. Because that was at one time at your nanny's farm. I was right there. I had 3 coyotes that I could have gotten rid of. They were chasing deer, but they came right on top of me. I just couldn't bring myself to shoot.
I think now I probably could, but I remember there was one time where I saw one. I was like, "Oh, that looks too much like a dog. I can't."
Yeah,
no.
I can't. I don't think I can do it. But
I don't know. Next time I see as many raccoons as I saw out there this hunting season, I think I'll just start taking shots though for target practice, because there was a lot of them out there this year. But that's neither here nor there. Why don't we?
That's
why don't we talk about something that always gets us a lot more hate? Can you guess what it is?
So it's not eating raccoons? I'm gonna guess, if it's based on our last show, I'll guess our minimum wage.
So
are we gonna talk California and they're incredibly intelligent? Let's raise minimum wage for fast food workers.
So every time we talk minimum wage and we make a short about it, it always, so many comments go on saying, you just want people to starve, or you just hate that, you just hate workers, and you just support large businesses, yada 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 yada. Because let's face it, people have not been taught economics 101. Well, California raised its minimum wage up to $20 an hour for restaurants that had over 60 locations nationwide. And two things have happened. One, with most chains increasing by nearly $2 on just any given item. So here's the thing. One of the biggest leaps with Burger King, and the double Whopper meal used to cost $15.09, which is already insane when you think about it. That Burger King of all, maybe Wendy's I could understand it, but Burger King, the Whopper being $15.09 is insane, and surged up to $16.89. A 12% increase for the same meal. When it came to the big fish meal, it jumped from $7.49 to $11.49, at a 53% increase. You also had other businesses seeing massive increases as well. I like this one, a large fry going from $4.49 to $5.99. I remember when a large fry was on the dollar menu at McDonald's.
Dollar, yeah.
I did something nice for Kat when she wasn't feeling so well. Like, I went and got I went and picked up groceries, and I said, all right, I'm going to go pick up some food. And Wendy's was unfortunately closed, so I went by McDonald's. And I said, I don't want anything. I went, well, I'm going to get her just like a large fry or something like that in case she decides she changes her mind, which she normally does. I ordered a large fry. I didn't realize how expensive it was. It was $4.50 even here for a large fry at McDonald's. Had I known that, I was tough luck. He told me not to get anything. But $4.50 for a fry over here in North Carolina as well. Absolutely insane. Milkshakes of all sizes increased by $1. Most sandwiches went up on a 40 or 50-cent average. In-N-Out Burger also saw hikes. And now here's the thing, though. So you have all these businesses going up, and I keep seeing people say, oh, well, and I think it says it down here.
They're just gouging.
Oh, yeah, right. That's one thing they're saying for sure. But here's the thing. The law only applies to restaurants offering limited or no table service and which are part of a nation chain with at least 60 establishments nationwide. So now all these places are going to increase their costs for their items, making it so, let's face it, people are probably going to go to places that they're just not going to eat out much at all, right? They're probably going to start eating at home more and more often, which frankly, hey, is better for you, all right? It doesn't cost that much to make yourself like some Korean beef and rice. At least that's what I make all the time because it's quick and easy to make. But with that, you're now going to see less hours for workers. You're going to see, like in the case over here, places actually, workers in shock to find out that restaurants are now closing already after only a couple of days of the minimum wage law coming into effect. And these places that do have less than 60 locations who are not subject to the law, how are they supposed to find workers now? Because guess what? They're paying $12 an hour or $15 an hour. Well, now these people can go over to McDonald's and make $20 an hour. So even these small restaurants, they said they made it so, mom and pop businesses especially, or just smaller chains, can still flourish in their state because they don't have to go by the $20 minimum wage there. But all that then does is make it so no one's going to ever want to work for those restaurants ever again. Because why would I go work for the mom and pop when I could go to McDonald's for $20 an hour?
Guess whose restaurant is paying $16 an hour?
Whose?
The governor. Of course, he owns a couple of restaurants that are small that don't have to meet this $20 minimum wage.
Oh, just like how
Gavin Newsom.
Just like how during COVID, of course, he could go out and have a nice fancy meal with like 12 different people and it not be a big deal at all. Or still get their haircuts and all that kind of stuff as well.
So one thing I haven't dug into, it said 60 locations. Now, McDonald's are owned by franchisees, not...
They're still subject to the law. They're still subject to the law. It goes by...
What if I only own one?
You as the franchisee will still have to abide by it. It goes by the corporation as a whole that's owning the franchise rights.
Which is ludicrous.
Exactly, because you're still...
We know from our franchising experience, a lot of most franchisees are not wealthy, ginormous corporations.
Most people who would own your local franchises are upper middle class at best if they're doing well, right? Like most of them who are actually succeeding are upper middle class, not rich. Now there's some out there, obviously. I mean, we know a couple who definitely made
and fast food groups money. are normally an exception in fast food because a lot of
especially like McDonald's where I think they require like $1 million down or something. It's insane. But when it comes to a lot of franchising, most people who own businesses aren't like super rich by any means. They're usually just upper middle class in many situations if they're successful. And as we know, not everyone's successful. Like, you might look at their business and go, well, they're clearly successful because they're a large corporation all over the country. But that one person who owns that location might be struggling and losing money year over year over year. You don't know. And of course,
well, and maybe it's not even losing money. You know you can run a very profitable business and still not have any cash.
oh, I know, yeah. Well, because a lot of times if you want that to continue, if you want to keep making sure you can hire more people and pay your employees better, you're going to be sacrificing more and more of your own. And again, the left has this view of most business owners saying, oh, they just want to exploit their laborers as much as possible. How many people do we know who own businesses who that's the main thing they talk about in the sense of how can I pay my people more? How can I give them a bigger bonus? How can I attract more people to want to come work for me? How can I provide a better working environment for them? Many franchisees we talk to, their main priority is their workers before even themselves. Now,
Well, and you said that it's going to, that people are going to flock to say McDonald's because they're paying more money. Well, they're going to try. But what McDonald's is going to do is not hire as many people, and it's going to end up costing jobs. Minimum wage increases always end up in job losses for the people who can least afford job losses. And so now what you're going to have is young males, black, white, Hispanic, primarily minority, who would be willing to work for $15 an hour, who are not allowed to. So
Yes.
what we're going to say is it's better for them to live off government help or whatever it is than to go take a job that doesn't pay a certain amount. It makes no sense at all.
So my plan right now is to do, because we keep getting so many comments on any short we post where we talk about minimum wage, and it's darn one. Last one, there's some people bickering back and forth, which I like to see more of. But there's a ton of people out there who do not seem to understand how damaging minimum wage really is overall. And so I'll probably end up making kind of a small mini documentary type thing on the minimum wage, and maybe like, a 15, 20-minute one. And I figure afterwards we can then get together and do a whole episode mostly just breaking down the minimum wage a bit more, because this is one of those things where I'm not saying it's the most important issue in the country by any stretch of the imagination. I think immigration is far more important. I think even, just general government spending far more important. But it doesn't mean this isn't important. And
Well,
frankly,
and it doesn't mean that those two things aren't tied together.
Exactly.
An influx of labor creates a bigger supply of labor, which drives down the prices of labor, which then forces the government to then artificially create the level that they want to create. And you got this vicious cycle.
yeah, and that's one thing that people don't understand, the basics of just supply and demand half the time. And again, it's all thanks to the schools. Like, let's be real. When it comes, I have a hard time being too upset with these people at times because our schools don't teach this. Our schools don't teach anything involving economics whatsoever. And when they do talk about it, again, I mentioned this last time, they talk about it in the area of social studies, where instead they talk about the groups of people and what they're, more of their, again, it's more feelings based than actual historical based. And so you don't even really get a firm grasp of any of the economic situation of the time when you're studying social studies over actual history. So we'll learn about the unions, but we won't look at any of the critical information when it comes to the unions. And the thing is, when it comes,
Make sure that's part of your breakdown, because when the question of minimum wage and what should the government do, it all comes down to who protects the worker is the question
Yep.
that everybody's going to have, and that's the chapter title in Free to Choose.
actually, I
Who
think that was.
protects-
I think I was
protects the
just
worker?
past that chapter recently, actually, on my second read through. I think right now, actually, I might be on that chapter right now. I should open it up. I have it over there right now. But I have a question for you then, because I think we both agree right now that the modern day union is terrible, right? The teachers union, I think we would both agree definitely public sector unions are awful.
Never should even be allowed.
Exactly. But I will ask this. When it comes to the idea of a union without the force of government, using what is extensively, actual force to make sure it exists, when it comes just in the private sector, them just evolving naturally, are you against that?
Well, the Constitution guarantees us the right to assemble with whoever we want, whenever we want. So I'm not going to argue against the right of assembly.
So would you say then some of the early unions, were they at least a force for good, or was it always kind of a problem from the get-go?
So I think it's kind of like, the road to hell paved with good intentions. And so I think the intentions have always been good, and I think some good did come because there were some abhorrent working conditions, child labor, all sorts of things that have improved, and those early unions had a big part in that. So I'm not going to say that they were all bad, but from day one, power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely, right? And so from day one, they were corrupt. They were filled with opportunities of patronage for payoffs and bribes and all these different things. And so they quickly turned into what they've become. But when you look at the teachers union is my least favorite of all the unions. What purpose does it serve? What good does it serve? And so what they've become now is terribly abhorrent. And it's awful. But what Milton Friedman will teach you is that while they had some good, their impact on the overall growth in the economy and the overall good things that happened was minor, because from 1900 up until middle of the century or so, it was only like 2 or 3% of the people were even unionized.
Well, and not just that, you mentioned the whole child labor thing, but even by the stats of the time, child labor was going away well before it was ever outlawed. Like, it had basically already become a non-issue by the time it was ever outlawed. I think when it was outlawed, over like 90% of all child labor was simply kids working on their family farms. It wasn't kids in factories scrubbing machines or anything like that. That was a very small portion of time, at least in America. There's other countries where it's definitely, there's other countries where it still goes on pretty heavily. But strange enough, those are communist countries,
slavery.
not capitalist countries of all things. But when it comes to like the issue of child labor especially, when you have a free market, who actually wants to send their child to a place where there's a chance of them actually being killed? Like, not many parents are okay with that. So it was already going out of fashion before it was ever outlawed, is the thing.
And obviously what took it out of fashion was an increase in the standards of living for everyone
Yes.
due to capitalism. That's what made the change, because when you're living in such a state of degradation that is your only choice. I've got to send my kid out so that we can survive. Then that's what you do. But once capitalism rose the level and the ability to live at a certain level, then it started to go away. So I wasn't saying that they were solely responsible for that. I was just saying there were some good intentions.
yeah.
He said they did.
I just
But
wanted to say I'm so
for
proud
the
of
growth
you.
of the industrial age, they had very little impact on the overall improvement.
I've always tabs pulled up like in the background over here, and like every now and again it starts like resetting and like the ads start playing, and I have to sit there and mute them all over again. No, because that's like one of the things that I always see discussed quite a bit is the fact of like, I think most people would agree, at least most people on the right would agree that unions are bad now, but like what was their point in the past? And I kind of lean towards most of what you were saying there. Path to hell paved with good intentions. And because the thing to remember is they always like to say, well, unions are the representation of all the workers coming together, but not really. It's the representation of whoever's on the board of the union at the end of the day. Like you say, absolute power corrupts absolutely. So when unions do get too big, there becomes a problem where basically a board of 12 people are deciding things, and they really aren't caring about what's happening to the hundreds and hundreds of people under them. They're caring about what's going to help them directly half the time.
Yeah.
What's going to get
Well,
them more
and-
dues? What's going to get them more money in their
That was
pockets?
the thing, is what's going to get them more dues, because that's what led to, if you didn't, you were either forced and they would take your union dues out before you even had any say in it, or if you were caught saying, I don't want to do that, then good luck get through the union bosses. And so, but the one that made me the maddest, and I can't remember which leader of the teachers union was that said it. It wasn't Weingarten, it was before her. But in essence, the question was about, what is this going to do for students? And he says, I'll start caring what happens to the students when they start paying union dues. And that was an actual quote.
That was, I want to say, yeah. I forget exactly where, but that was actually pretty early on in Glenn Beck's book, Conform, which was, and he really hammered very heavily against that. I remember that quote exactly. That was one of those, again, it was early on in the book. It was one of those quotes that made me go, holy crap. Okay, I knew they were bad, but my God.
Yeah, that's kind of like the epitome of saying the quiet part out loud.
Which is what I think the left does more and more and more these days, which is both good and bad, I would say, right? Like, it's good because we can actually confront it easier and not seem like lunatics, but it's bad in the sense of, wow, they feel that comfortable now because of how far the Overton window has now shifted. I mean, I always like to say, I'll go to Walmart and I'll see people with, like, I remember not long ago I saw a girl wearing hammer and sickle earrings, and my first thought was, God help you if you walked in there with swastika earrings. I mean, you'd be thrown out in a heartbeat. Yet hammer and sickle, which murdered way, way, way more people. Again, both I mean, obviously, they're both really awful, but let's be real here. It probably goes Mao's China, Soviet Union, and then Nazis. Like, when it comes to the hierarchy of, like, the top 3 evil people or nations in the world, like, that's probably how it goes down. But they're comfortable. They can sit there, go out wearing the hammer and sickle all day long. You can post that on Facebook all day long because we don't teach history at all anymore.
We can go out west in our own country and salute the statue of Lenin.
Now, admittedly, that is a private statue, so technically they do have rights to have it because it's in a private park, I guess. But again, it's one of those cases, culturally speaking, the fact that people don't go there and as a ridicule to them. Because there's plenty of people out there who they'll go, well, yeah, Stalin was bad, but Lenin was all right. And it's like, okay, he was fighting what was actually evil. I'll give you that. But he turned out to be more evil. Like, that doesn't. He still did evil, terrible things. And yes, you can blame him for the famine. When he goes in there and starts saying, when the Soviet Union starts saying things like, oh no, the plants are communists, so instead of taking the weeds out of your crops, you need to have them all growing together because they'll share the nutrients like good communists do and grow together in harmony, which of course is nonsense and causes massive famine. When the government enforces that by policy, yes, they cause the famine. Lenin, because there was multiple famines all throughout the Soviet Union's history. Almost every ruler seemed to have a famine. And all of them directly responsible for all those deaths. But no, they'll still worship at a statue of Lenin all day long thinking, oh, he was one of the few good communist leaders.
Yeah. We just haven't been able to do communism the right way.
Again, people need to read Starship Troopers. It has a great teardown of communism in it. The bugs represent the communist. They do a great job with it. Mind you, in the book Starship Troopers, there's maybe 10 pages of actual war at all, and then the entire rest of the book is like his old high school teacher sending him letters tearing down communism, basically. It's great. It's awesome. And also tearing down like fascism and Nazism and talking about how they're extremely evil too, and the problems that were associated with them. And then of course they came over there and did the movie, which, oh look, they're wearing an SS uniform, they're fascist, and that's like the only fascist thing they ever show in the movie. Yet for some reason everyone thinks they're fascist. It drives me nuts. Man. But yeah, it's crazy with how much they just openly say their stuff now out loud.
Yeah, the source of inflation is government spending. The source of unemployment is government interference and not letting the market do its thing. We need more capitalism, not less, if we want to live in a land of plenty.
And it's also worth saying, I see a lot of people say, oh, capitalism is evil because look at all these evil child labor camps in other countries thanks to the capitalist markets. And all I'm saying is those child labor camps are in communist countries, not capitalist countries. Capitalists might buy those products, but it's the communists who are putting their children to work in those factories. I see them try to blame capitalism for the Chinese sweatshops, and it's nuts.
And it's the leftists over here with their iPhones and their Nike sneakers that are supporting slave labor all across the world, driving electric vehicles. We know there's slave labor digging in those terrible cobalt and lithium mines. And they are literally digging their own graves in those situations.
There are more slaves today than there has ever been in human history. And no one cares. We never really fully got rid of slavery. We just outsourced our slavery. That's the reality of it.
And it's blamed on capitalism instead of being blamed the right way. If
Yeah.
let's say that we got rid of all the crap that government has imposed on everyone, and you could produce things and do things the right way. We're from the government, and we're here to help.
Again, they try to blame capitalism for all these problems, not realizing the fact of it's their solutions that simply perpetuate all the problems that you keep seeing happening around the world like that. Again, if you can't, the only people who have a monopoly on violence at the end of the day is always going to be the government, not a business, right? Walmart can't point a gun to your head and say, buy this product or else. But you know who can? The government can, right? There's a song that's somewhat similar to that.
Yeah. They can definitely put a gun to your head and force you to buy their favorite pharmaceutical product.
Yeah. Well, I will say this before, because it's getting close to 11:30 now. But before we leave,
Before you jump too far, I said pharmaceutical product. Any updates on Bobert? We're about to lose the house for sure because she has blood clots.
wait, what? I didn't
She had
hear
to go
this.
in for emergency surgery for blood clots in her legs, and so obviously, you know, the X is trying to link it to vaccines. But what vaccines or no, it definitely puts the Republican majority at risk. But I haven't seen anything since it came out that she went for surgery yesterday.
I thought she was a pureblood. She get the vax?
I don't know.
So they say she has May-Turner syndrome. But they say what they say it should be a very easy surgery and it shouldn't affect her ability to perform her duties regardless.
Okay, good. Yesterday it was just, you know, blasting, life-threatening.
No, in fact, I think that's just probably people on X just throwing a fit over it because here it's basically saying it's not a normal surgery, but it's not a dangerous surgery or anything.
Okay.
They just say it's kind of scary to see in someone her age.
Yeah, she's a prime example of the wackiness on the right-hand side of things, but that's a very important seat to keep in the Republican column.
And here's the thing: everyone wants to get on how crazy she is, and again, I agree, definitely kind of crazy. Is she anywhere near Ilhan Omar though? Like, if you had to put if you looked at the most radical member of the Republican Congress and placed them up against the most radical member of the Democrats, one's gonna be a heck of a lot more radical.
She'd have to say an awful lot to ever say anything dumber than Hank Johnson or Sheila Jackson Lee or AOC or Ilhan. I mean, they've got their own set of wackadoodles to deal with.
But yeah, it's saying that everything here is saying that she's going to be just fine and it's not going to affect her duties to perform that in Congress at all. So everything was good there. At the very least, she's attractive. So, I mean, that's a bonus.
Well, if you get in trouble, I hear she'll lend you a hand.
That's a good one. Well, you mentioned the dumb statements by Democrats in Congress. Did you see what the St. Louis mayor said?
I did, but I'm suddenly drawn. It's probably because it's like midnight. I can't remember what was said.
So, at
yeah, this is the super mayor or whatever she called herself. She thinks she's a superhero.
She was part of a group called Black Mayors Against Crime. She's a St. Louis mayor, which, mind you, I think St. Louis actually has a higher crime rate than even Chicago does. It is one of the worst places in the country. And she said she's going to vow to hold business owners accountable for the violence around convenience stores and gas stations. So this is absolutely hysterical, right? And real quick, I don't know what Post Millennial is doing, but now it's ad after ad between every paragraph, which is insane. But oh well.
Let's make sure I got the right mayor. Is her name Tiffany?
Man, people are gonna call me racist for how I'm gonna pronounce her name. It's Tashora.
I might have a different mayor in mind. There was another one that had a big. The entire town was against her because she they know she's been embezzling money basically, and she won't allow the investigation to go forward. And
I
she's
think
making.
that's a different mayor, and she was also again saying that like, oh, they just are racist is all.
Yeah, and she's making like $350,000 a year to be mayor of this town. The governor makes like 140. So I had a different mayor in mind, so I didn't know about this one.
Yes, this one again is part of a organization called the Black Mayors Coalition, which I'm just gonna say, I know it's like I know everyone has to say this, but just think if you had a coalition called the White Mayor Coalition. I mean, really, come on now. But she said, actually, I'll come right down here. She adds, so then how can we hold these business owners accountable and also bring down crime? Some of these things are already doing. We're finding out other mayors are doing as well. Now, she never goes into detail what any of these things are. But it's kind of like in Chicago, they were talking about trying to sue auto manufacturers for making it too easy to break into the cars.
Yeah, they actually did. They didn't just talk about it.
Yeah. Oh, they actually did?
Yeah, Hyundai and Kia, I think, were the two.
So the other thing, the race added comments from Young, who said, for the first time in history, we have an unprecedented number of black mayors in some of our biggest cities. Mayor Adams in New York City, Mayor Bass in Los Angeles, and Mayor Johnson in Chicago, to name a few. Okay, I'm just saying, if you sat there and got like the Grand Duke of the KKK or whatever to sit there and say, hey, what's your argument for not allowing black people to be mayors? He would point to those three mayors. Okay, come on. That's the mayors you choose to represent you right now. You can't pick some good mayors. There's plenty of like black mayors of like small towns and cities all across this country who are probably doing a fantastic job. And you choose New York City, Los Angeles, and Chicago to represent you. You're not doing yourselves any favors there. Come on now.
Maybe it's easier to look good in comparison if you surround yourself with those three.
I mean, probably. So I'll go play actually her own words so people can actually hear what she said. 'Cause it's just.
So remember, I don't get to hear. The other
yeah.
two, I kind of knew what was being said, so you'll have to give me the Cliff Notes version.
Will do.
Leaders from Jackson, Mississippi, Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., Atlanta, Durham, St. Louis, and more meeting Wednesday and Thursday to talk crime and solution. St. Louis Mayor Tashara Jones says she's taking back strategies used in Atlanta for nightclub owners and eyeing ways to reduce crimes around convenience stores.
We have a lot of violence around convenience stores and gas stations, so how can we hold those business owners accountable and also bring down crime? And then some of the things that we're already doing, we're finding that other mayors are doing as well.
Discussions with the council.
So I love what she says there. She says, we know almost all the crime, or we know a lot of the crime is happening around convenience stores and nightclubs and things. So what can we do to hold those places accountable? As if they're the ones encouraging the crime. Like, the dude running the convenience store is like, hey guys, you want to sit there and plan your next heist? Come to my place. I mean, come on. There's stories about the gas stations and places like New York and Chicago hiring private security to try to avoid crime happening at their locations because the city won't help them. And here this idiot goes saying, oh, we need to hold the stores accountable because they're the ones who are truly at fault for the crime, not the criminals. Absolutely insane.
I would love to see the details of this plan.
She doesn't give any. That's the crazy thing. She just like a lot of these people do. And she says, oh, a lot of places are already doing things similar, but then never goes into detail about it.
Yeah, show it, because I don't believe they are.
The closest I could think of again is Chicago saying that we're gonna trying to sue auto manufacturers for making their cars too easy to break into.
In the immortal words of a former UNC player, I'm speechless.
I don't really get that reference to. I remember you mentioning it before, but I can't think of it.
No, that's just what he said. Instead of speechless, he said speakless, and so that's become part of. I always say speakless, and people think I'm dumb now.
I do the same thing with the amphibious thing.
Yeah, I've gotten called out a couple of times on that too.
I just said inadvertently one time at church, and someone looked at me, and I was like, "It's a reference. It's a reference."
I said it at a business dinner, and everybody at the table looked around. Did you just say amphibious?
Well, no, it's kind of like when people say like, "Oh, how the what was it? Instead of oh, how the tables have turned. Oh, how the turntables." You know, like, it's just
That's Michael Scott. That's
yeah,
from The Office.
exactly. Which I would say by now it shouldn't be able to be referenced and people know what you're talking about. But man, people still love that show.
No, you should know every meme from The Office. They're all usable and forever for the rest of the time.
Well, let's be honest. It was also one of the last like really good sitcoms overall. There really hasn't been but so many in a long time. So now we have like Two Broke Girls or whatever the crap that is. You know, I don't know.
Man, you haven't watched TV in a while. That thing hadn't been on the air in like a decade. I don't think.
Don't make me feel old. But still, like, again, Republican mayor come out and say something like this at a all whites meeting. Man, you know the media would be all over that crap. Let's hold businesses accountable for the crimes that take place against their businesses. And you wonder why there's so much crime in your cities.
Well, I mean, we constantly get made fun of for saying let's hold illegal immigrants responsible for the crimes they've committed.
Yeah, I mean, look what they did to Trump.
Get made fun of for saying let's hold the rioters, BLM rioters, accountable for what they did.
Well, again, look what happened to Trump when he said when the looting starts, the shooting starts. I mean, and that was so big for a while there that even like video games, like, so there was a Halo game called Halo ODST where you're kind of like in one of the Earth cities after it started to be invaded and everything. You're kind of sneaking around at night and avoiding everything. Very awesome. Love it. On the wall is a bit graffiti and stuff on it, and one of the things that was graffiti on the wall was when the looting starts, the shooting starts. You know, of course, implying that there's been riots that have gone on throughout that area as the aliens started invading the cities. And they actually went back, the 343, the company who now runs Halo, actually went back and edited that out of the game entirely. So any references to that, as well as any two pro-police references, were removed from the games. And even the new games, they actually still do this. There used to be a game mode called SWAT, which was just you didn't have any shields and you died like in one shot. And now they said, oh no, we're not going to call it SWAT because that's a reference to the police. We're going to now call it Tactical Slayer or something like that. Just stupid things like that, all because of all this nonsense. Absolutely insane. And now they're like, well, we can't say, when you jump off a cliff, we can't call that suicide, so it's now self-destruction. And it's like, oh, God, we got to get away from this crap. But I better not get on too much on a gaming rant. I'll save that from another channel.
We got another channel for that. And just make sure whatever you say, you're inclusive.
Oh, man. Listen, don't even mention inclusive in video games right now. It is just... I'll put it this way. Like old games, you used to be able to pick, like, okay, male or female, and like, okay, what voice options, what hair options, that kind of stuff for like role-playing games and things. No, now it's body type 1, body type 2. And then when you look at all the voice lines, they just put all the male and female voice lines together so you can pick whatever one you want. And then like all the hairstyles are all just under one section, so you can't separate them at all. It's like if you went to Walmart looking for like, an action figure for your son and they just melded all the toy sections into one section and said good luck. It's just stupid. They've done that.
Forced, of course.
I know. I know they've done it in some states. And it's so ridiculous. We have so many studies saying it's total crap. And it just... Oh, man. Boy. But yeah, so St. Louis. If you're a victim of crime, they'll come after you.
So let's kind of equate this back to New York. So is it the responsibility of the MTA? Is it the government responsibility of crime in the subway? And if we're going to make it the business owners' responsibility when they go out and do like Daniel Penny does and tries to protect their own constituents and their own customers, are they then going to be prosecuted for protecting against the crime?
Well, again, it was funny because now there's these videos of these women talking about how they've been like beaten in the street basically of New York, and people keep asking the question of where is all the men protecting them? Why are men just letting it happen? You look at these videos and men just walk on by. It's like, well, because last time a guy did something about it, you threw him in jail for murder. I mean, and they'll go, well, you didn't have to kill the guy. And it's always people who their interpretation of violence is based off movies and television shows where they think yeah, you can punch them in the face and they just get knocked right out. And in reality, it's if you punch someone in the face hard enough to knock them out, there's a good chance they're going to suffer a lifelong damage from that. Like, it's not pretty. You know, these are the same people who say, "Oh, why didn't the cop shoot him in the
in the leg.
Yeah.
Yeah, just shoot him in the leg.
I mean, you shot my handgun. You know how hard it is to aim that thing sometimes, especially like, and think about a moving target running at you, trying to, stab you. I mean,
Well, and then shooting somebody in the leg, it's a lot of really big carriers of blood in the legs. There's a really good chance you're going to bleed out if you shoot in the leg.
just be like Buffy, kick the knife out of their hand or something,
Like how you went to Buffy.
I don't know why. Whenever I think of like someone disarming people in like a silly way, I always think of Buffy with all the crazy kicks she always did for some reason. That was a good show though. Really good show.
It was a pretty fun video game too.
I have it on. Well, I have a completely legal version of it on the computer, I should say. Arg.
Hard.
But yeah, it's all this stuff. Like you said, like who should be held accountable for all the stuff happening in subways? It should be the government, 100%, because they're the ones who have completely been just absent when it comes to actually prosecuting these criminals.
Yeah, so it's getting late here, so we won't dig into it. But Mayor Adams, they actually came around and got rid of some immigrant squatters, right? So they're violating their own sanctuary city rules.
Yeah, when they start well, I think was it Denver? They were trying to say, "Hey, we'll give you free bus tickets to Canada." How's that? So.
Yeah, good luck with that.
I don't know. Trudeau at first was saying, we love immigrants. And once they announced that, he then went out and said, we're full. we can't take any more.
What they all do.
No.
All it takes is one busload for them to say, okay, that's enough.
Again, Abbott and DeSantis were geniuses when it came to busing them to these cities and busing them to like Martha's Vineyard and stuff like that. And I want to see them do more of it. And, they can sit there and say, oh, it's forced busing. They're not forced busing. They're literally just saying, hey, if you want a free ticket to New York, let us know. And there you go.
It's Massachusetts that they are allowing the immigrants that were flown to Martha's Vineyard. They're going to let illegal immigrants sue DeSantis in Florida because they were forced, when in reality, in all of these situations, they've been having people sign waivers. But the liberal judge
will push it through regardless. It's lawfare.
He already did, allowing illegal immigrants to have access to our court system to sue states, governors, and citizens of the United States. The world, our country is turned on its ear.
See, here's the thing. In a lot of these areas, illegal immigrants are voting. And yes, they are voting in local elections. It's completely legal in many areas across this country for a legal immigrant to vote in your local elections and have a say over your school boards as well as your city. You have them now allowing illegal immigrants who broke into this country to sue American citizens. You have them being granted the Second Amendment right to bear arms. And there was a liberal judge who authorized that.
They're being paid UBI, $1,400 a month, literal cash in certain cities.
And that's not even counting all the other stuff where where government's coming in and telling some places, no, you have to house these illegal immigrants, which, yes, the Constitution says you can't quarter troops, but I think that still should count, okay? I don't think the government...
Close enough. And
should let the force anywhere
and they're counted in the census to determine congressional...
So they do get representation in Congress that you basically, again, your voice is being taken away from you because you're having to share it now with people who shouldn't be in the country in the first place. It is a version, to me, I think of it as a new age version of colonization, right? And instead of subverting it through military force.
So some of the left is now putting out literal memes that say that. We're just getting you back. This is exactly what you did. You went to the shores and colonized.
Well, there was a lot of memes about that for a while over in England, especially, where they've really been, I would say, actually colonized. When they issue out coinage that shows Britannia as a black woman, Like, I'm sorry, at that point, yes, you have been colonized over there. All right, they have
Yeah, and
special
look-
privileges that the native population doesn't. And look at what colonization is.
I
It's
think
when
the
a
number was
foreign
like
entity.
6,000. It's either 4,000 or 6,000 mosques currently being built new in England right now.
Again, for the normal standard for colonization is a group of people coming in, being afforded special privileges over the native population, taking control of the culture, and implementing usually their own beliefs upon the people, as well as displacing them at the same time. Well, guess what? London right now is minority English. And that is crazy to think about, that London is minority English. You have their coinage, as well as many of their classical figures now being depicted as black. The BBC ran a whole thing saying the original Irish were black. You're having this complete, rewriting of history to accommodate this new foreign force entering to their area. And again, they have a bigger claim than we do for the sake of they are the native population, right? They are native to that area. I mean, I guess technically you could say, oh, they came from France, whatever. They've been there long enough that they're definitely considered natives at this point. And you have a different group of people coming in, displacing them, taking over their culture, taking over the cities, having special treatment under the law that the natives do not get access to. That is colonization. And I mean, I don't know. I think we still have a chance of getting out of kind of all the stuff happening to us right now when it comes to all the massive immigration coming in. I do not know how the hell England gets out of it at this point. No clue. I am scared for what happens to them over there.
I'm not sure that we get out without an armed uprising.
I mean, God, I hope not. But the problem is now you're having the government saying that illegal immigrants can be armed. So how do you deport them when they have weapons now? I mean, and let's be real. The minute they start deporting them, and that's an interesting question right there. What's the best method when it comes to politically to deport these people? Because obviously if you just go in there and start pulling everyone out, there's pictures of like children and women and all this stuff being ripped from their homes and their homes, and it's not going to look good media wise. And even people who are on the right who say they want that, let's be real, they're a bunch of wusses and they would easily back down pretty quickly, right? So what is the method you use?
It's not going to happen. Trump can say he's going to do it day one all he wants. It's not going to happen.
I mean, at the very least, the first thing you have to at least say is anyone we catch breaking the law who's a legal immigrant, we're sending back home
Immediately
instantly.
goes back.
Anyone who is working an American job, who's with a fake social security number, any of that stuff, so they can work an American job, sent back immediately.
What if they have an I-10? I mean, that the IRS legally allows them to work in America under an I-10,
which is insane. But certain companies should
and
don't they do?
and then gives them refunds.
But don't certain companies still have to sit there and check for legal status before they're allowed to work?
It's supposed to.
Well, so that's the point. So instead of going the route of ripping people away from their, again, quote, homes, because they shouldn't be there in the first place, but to avoid that, make it almost impossible for them to live here. And I know that still people are going to say, oh, they can't eat, they can't. Okay, we'll say this. We'll offer you free rides back to wherever country of origin you came from. That sound nice? And here's what we could also say. If you leave peacefully, well, you can still apply for citizenship. But if we find you and you've done anything illegal, you will never be allowed to apply for any citizenship whatsoever in this country, no matter what. Doesn't matter if your kid's a citizen. Doesn't matter if you have a relative over here. You are permanently denied from here on out. Because there's tons of people who get caught crossing the border illegally and then apply afterwards through the legal way after they've been deported and still get legal status. Even though really they should have probably never been allowed to because they already violated our laws once before.
So I mean, you know for a fact it's going to be a mass amnesty. That's going to be the solution that the Uniparty comes up with.
I mean, they've already been trying to push it, yeah. And it's what Reagan did too. Don't forget that. But
right, but remember Reagan's thoughts were closer aligned with ours in the fact that they're not going to come in and get government benefits as illegal people. And
also the numbers weren't nearly what they are today.
Right.
I think they said in just the past 2 years, we've had more illegal immigrants come into this country than the 60-year period where like the most immigration was coming through in Ellis Island. Like 60 years of Ellis Island immigration over there it apparently pales in comparison to what's happened, of course, in just 2 years under Biden.
See, and the thing is we both are pro-immigration. We want more immigration. We just want to have the right people come in and not letting other countries open up the gates of their jails and then send them here. We don't want to be flooded with military-age men coming for God knows what. We want control over who enters the country, and I don't think that's not being unchristian. It's being smart.
I would say that I'm not sure if I can be classified as pro-immigration even legally or legal immigration anymore. Because here's my thing is that I still say any country that's like a third world country, we just shouldn't allow any immigration from, period. Like at all, even legal. I would think culture is extremely important. And even though there's a lot of good people who live in those countries, great. You can fix your country. You are the voice of change in your country. That's what you should be. But I don't think we should take the risk with that sort of stuff. I think we should be very, very particular and still just say,
I think we have to be careful and have safeguards, but there's some legitimate cases for asylum, and I'm perfectly okay with a more robust asylum seeking program. But we have to be careful.
But why us? Like, why is a person in Africa going to us for asylum when, like, why not Europe? Why not Asia? Why not any of these other areas? Why do we have to be that area for these people who are, I get they're suffering. I get sad. 100%. I understand why they want to come here. And there's plenty of people who come here legally from these kind of areas who are extremely good people and who are, excellent Americans, no doubt. But I think right now we've lost our Western culture so much at this point. We have to be very cautious with who we're letting in. I think we need a complete moratorium on immigration, period, for a long time.
You know where I stand. Anybody that comes in, there needs to be assimilation. That's where we've lost our way.
Oh yeah,
we used to be the melting pot, and that now we're the great stir fry or whatever the crazy leftists want to call it. But right now, if we don't bring people in, our current birth rate's not going to support a very healthy country at all going forward. We're going to go bankrupt much quicker than where we're already tracking. We're going to be in need of immigrants to just support the current crazy cradle to grave systems that are currently in place.
Or
if you ever want one penny from Social Security, you better hope we bring some people across the border.
At that point, don't we then have the same problem that Rome had when they started laying tons of people?
Yes. It's a no-win.
I agree it's really a no-win overall, but I think the win is you let Social Security collapse in on itself. It will be terrible for 10, 20 years probably. But for the long term, long term, it's going to be better in the end if we let it collapse, if we let it fall in on itself, because the reality is that's unsustainable. And the problem is people don't care until eventually it falls, and then they realize the problems of which has been created. I think for the most part, we have to go through a terrible period of collapse before we ever can actually move forward in this country, which is sad. It's awful. I'm not looking forward to it, but I think is the only thing that can save us in a way.
It's only going to happen if it's forced and there's no other choice. As long as the power that our current government has, as long as they can keep a 96% reelect rate, they're going to keep giving away until it collapses in on itself. So I don't see any situation, I don't see any case where there's going to be a controlled landing into this new way of doing things. It's going to be forced upon us either from an outside force or some giant calamity, maybe natural, maybe totally economic, but it's going to take some really tough times, and it's going to have to happen with a surprise out of nowhere. We're not brave enough or strong enough to have leaders that will say, listen, we're going to go through a period of austerity. Those days are long gone.
And I think there's a third option mixed in there as well, and it's not. And I'm not saying it's a good option, but it's also the option of the tyrant, right? Where eventually people have had enough. They elect someone who strong arms everything, who really does take away civil liberties from the people who, let's be honest, that we don't like instead. And then you have to pray to God they give up their power when they say they're going to give up their power. When, let's be real, very rarely has that ever existed in the history of the world that people actually give up their power.
Historically, that is the natural path.
It is. It's that right now we are ruled by an elite class, and you could say French Revolution is a great example of this. They're kings in all but name. Let's be real, right? They're lords and kings in all but name. What then happens when the people do kind of rebel and actually throw them out? Well, you get a tyrant. Don't get me wrong, a lot of stuff gets done, but you get the tyrant. And I mean, the same thing happened.
Run on time.
I mean, of course, I think Caesar is also a great example, right? Where the people were losing their jobs because of not immigration, but because of the massive influx of slave labor that was happening all throughout Rome. So when Caesar walked in, they were ecstatic because he said he was going to impose laws that made it so you couldn't have a certain number of slaves working at a lot of the, farms and stuff like that. And so the people loved them for it. And of course, he gave them a lot of bread. He gave them, not so much circuses back then as much as was in the later periods, but he still gave them free food. He guaranteed them jobs, did all this stuff. And of course, played the part whenever they offered him the crown and he turns it away and the crowd goes wild and all that stuff. Yet guess what? He's still a tyrant in all but name. That is the natural course for things. And I think that's definitely that third option that's there of someone pops up, says, I'm going to end the illegal immigration. And when the negative news stories hits, they start arresting the journalists. They don't care at that point. And it's a scary option that is there.
See, the problem I see much more tyranny coming from the other side of the aisle.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I see a more communist type tyranny happening more than a far right, totalitarian rising up.
Yep.
Well, it is about 12 o'clock now. We've been on for about 2 hours, so I think we'll go ahead and call it there, on a very depressing note. Do you have any, optimism to share?
Well, yeah, I'm generally optimistic about everything because I can control the things I can control, and I don't believe this is a zero-sum game. I still believe that there's enough capitalism left in this country that we can make our own way, build our own economy, as the hat says behind me. And it doesn't matter whether my glass is half full or half empty because I live in a world of faucets. I can put whatever I want in my glass whenever I want to. So I'm always positive.
And it doesn't...
Not when it comes to our government, though.
It also doesn't hurt that if things really start hitting the fan, we do have a farm in the middle of nowhere we can all run off to at least.
We could self-sustain for a little while.
Not for too long. Hopefully, Granddad is still going strong. He can tell us, okay, how do you smoke meats properly?
Oh, no, I got that part. The one thing I can't do is make pickles like Mom. I got to learn that one. She makes the best pickals. But
Kat loves making pickles and stuff like that, and so she can help with that.
After y'all left the other day, Daddy goes, I tell you what, they did so much for us while they were here, and we appreciate it so much. He goes, and then a little bit later, he goes, I tell you, that family can eat. I don't know what their food budget is, but it's got to be good because that family can eat.
We didn't have a big lunch or we didn't have a big breakfast, and we had a late lunch. So Junior and Sarah were tearing up some of that fried chicken and barbecue.
Well, he took notice.
Hey, you should be happy. They're going to grow up big and strong.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll be on. I think we're going to switch to mostly just doing this on Thursday, right? Is that good for you? Just keeping it on Thursdays?
Works for me.
All right. That works better for my schedule. So, all right. Well, hopefully we'll see all of y'all soon, and we'll make sure we post some shorts up all throughout the week. So, see you next Thursday.